I see it, Kingdom Hearts has 3 different types of boss fights. You've got fights that are based around some kind of gimmick. These could be good or bad, but will normally consist of some kind of unique mechanic in order to complete the fight or even deal damage to the boss. Fights that consist of you mashing your X button so hard that your controller bursts into flames and then runs away screaming in pain. And then you've got the fights that are so genuinely interactive, challenging, and mentally stimulating, they bring us back to replay the games over and over again, even 20 years down the line. I am on a mission to rank every single Kingdom Hearts boss, and today we're doing KH2. Twilight Thorn. This slippery little douchebag is literally just a tutorial boss, and his primary purpose is to introduce you to the snazzy new 2005 mechanic that is reaction commands. He'll chain you up in a way that reminds me of a repressed memory of my uncle in his basement, and it's your job to press the triangle button when the game prompts you to. I know it sounds difficult, but if you persevere, I know you'll get it. There's some cool stuff to look at, and we get some Roxas content, who we all know should have been the main protagonist. It's a gimmick fight in that it's solely based on the reaction commands, but it looked dope. A tier. Axel. He's super pissed because his best friend doesn't remember who he is, so he resorts to the only logical solution there is. Burn him to death! But not before he tells us exactly how many inches of penis he's got. 2. Anyone that doesn't like this fight is mentally impaired, okay? You're in an arena that is made of fire whilst wielding potentially the 2 coolest weapons in fictional existence at the same time. Whenever a motherfucker dual wields keyblades, the fight goes up by at least 10 points. I'm actually very impressed that Axel can actually wield his weapons without cutting off his own arms, to be honest. If I had to use those things, everyone here would be witnessing a self-circumcision. It's S tier, and it's a fucking good one. Possessor and Thresholder. Yes, I am also now just learning that this thing's name isn't the door Heartless. For some reason, this is the only time you fight a door across the whole entire series, even though our weapon of choice is a key. You knock on the door until the ghastly that resides inside gets coughed out, and then you club him to death. Boom, job done. This one was honestly tough to call. I think it's B tier. Beast. He's moody and locks himself in his room like an angsty teenager because he's all furry and hideous, and Belle, the super hot maiden, just doesn't have time for his shit. Instead of talking it out like an adult that, you know, owns a castle, he takes it upon himself to attack the only fucking friends he's got. Dickhead. You can use Cogsworth, the psychological genius, to basically just use trauma to get him to stop attacking you. And once his health is low enough, you can mash the ever-living piss out of the reaction button to finish him off. Except the carpal tunnel, I do enjoy a good button mash, however, this one's quite basic. D tier. Shadow Stalker. The ghostly ball that possesses a chandelier, a window, and a load-bearing beam. The chandelier is the first of many times in the game. You really kind of have to think, how the fuck am I supposed to not get hit by this? When he isn't forcibly inserting himself into Beast's belongings, he's basically just the helpless balloon at a kid's birthday party that's waiting to get popped by the kid sat in the corner drooling all over himself. Or in other words, me. There's kind of a gimmick to this guy, but nothing outside just hitting the reaction command button. I think it's B tier. Dark Thorn. After you Clark phase 1, he vomits darkness all over himself, Exorcist style, and then morphs into what looks more like an edgy Pokemon than a Heartless. At the start of the fight, he's stealthy, kind of like me, hiding in your garden shed. You'd think that would be an issue, only now it's your turn with the chandelier, and apparently Sora is way more skilled with that than he is with a Keyblade. After brutally impaling this guy like a doner kebab sat in the corner of a takeaway, you are free to face-fuck your X button to your heart's content. He moves around a lot, just kind of prolonging the inevitable, which pisses me off probably way more than it should, but there's not really much else to it. Definitely C tier. Shan Yu. This is the first absolute bullshit fight of the game, and not because of the fight itself, but because when you are done kicking this guy like a field goal, the all-knowing, super wise Emperor of China decides to give all the props to Mulan, who wasn't even in the party at the time. I'm calling bullshit, man. There's a door and some bad guys, but you just kind of smash the dude with the key and you will be right as rain. This is a hybrid between gimmick and mash because of the door mechanic, but seeing as you can just kind of ignore it, it goes here because Mulan is a glory-hogging fuck. Cerberus. This fight is fucking terrifying. He's so sporadic and unpredictable, man. The guy will just wind up the fattest 360 tail whip you have ever seen and knock you into next week. And if you try and get anywhere near him, you will soon come to regret it. In summary, big dog, 3 heads, you know the rest. This is a controversial one because although it's got a really cool reaction command, you do actually have to think about what you're doing and wait for openings in order to get anywhere near him. Dope fight, A tier. Pete Underworld, aka Get Out of My Way! This dude is about as delusional as me thinking this video is going to break 100 views. He's a bitch, man. He's more of a bitch than the guy that cuts the crusts off his bread. Like, who goes to that much effort for such a little result? It's very weird. He's got early onset dementia and is stuck in a constant state of thinking he's playing Wii bowling, and it actually physically frustrates me how he has so much power and control over the Heartless when his 1 rep max deadlift is a box of Cheerios. Pete must be a great villain because I hate him so much. Big Fat D. Hydra. Sorry, it had to be done. I think this fight can be super frustrating, and Danny DeVito does not make it any easier. Magnum Dom. It's a similar vibe to the Cerberus fight, but instead of 3 heads, there's about 1 million. My favourite part is the beheading, and I think the Pegasus command, kind of like my dick, is far too long and looks kind of dumb. I do like this fight because it's interactive and not annoying, while at the same time being challenging. Hey! Barbie. Well, my phone auto-corrected Barbosa, so we'll just go with that. Barbie actually fights back in a way that others don't, in that he's got some pretty lengthy and annoying combos that will knock you right out of yours. There's also not only the task of keeping Jack Sparrow alive, which can prove to be difficult at times, you also have to tactically plan out when and where you want to be located before you hit him, because if you do it wrong, the guy will just reside in the shadows for eternity. A tier. Big Mechanical Child Devourer. I don't know why we're even bothering to save these kids when we know they're just going to do some reprobate shit as soon as we do. The reaction command here is named after my signature bedroom move, and following with that theme, it also doesn't really do anything. Press X and wait for the win. I think this is D tier. Yeah, we could do without it. Ugster Bugster. What kind of psychedelic substance abuse was taking place at the time that this idea was conceived? All that looking at this footage does is make me overly aware of how limited my time on this planet is, and I don't want to devote any more of it to this absolute garbage portion of one of my most beloved games. This is as bad gets. In fact, fuck this bag of dicks, he gets his own tier. Volcano and Blizzard Lord. Sounds like my Club Penguin username, but at least now we know what happened to the happy couple from Elemental. These 2 blobs will bounce around like an elderly man's testicles in the bath, and it makes for some pretty cool animations, to be honest. Managing the 2 of them can be quite fun, but gets repetitive pretty quickly, and hitting them enough can cause them to actually climax their minions all over you, but it just ends up being free XP. C tier. Ed, and Eddie. Honestly, if it makes the fight end quicker, I'll just feed Timon and Pumbaa to them, and then while they eat their dinner, I can move on to fight Scar. This is about as much fun as sticking your hand in a blender. F tier. Scar. The arena for this fight is cool as shit, man. Yeah, the colours are a little bit lackluster, but we can forgive that for how dope it is. I still, to this day, stick by the fact that Prideland's combat is super fun and makes for a nice change. Scar is what should really be the tipping point for most new players when you realise, shit, Reflector's overpowered us, fuck! It's a nice test of reaction timing, and it isn't so easy you can scratch your balls while you do it. This is an S tier fight for me, man, I like that shit. Death Star Robot. Again, this arena gets props because it's pretty cool. This is quite a good gimmick in that you have to beat this guy off in order to get him to splooge clusters everywhere and then run around collecting it. Once you have enough of them, you can perform the most over-exaggerated weapon spin, since Anakin and Obi-Wan had their battle on Mustafar. You know, with the fucking like, it looked great, boys, but you're not getting anywhere. A tier? I don't know. Yeah, that'll do. Demix, aka Dance Water Dance. This guy squirts watery versions of himself all over the gaff, and Sora's job is to manhandle them Mighty Mouse style to the point where they just dissipate. I think if you could reskin this fight, I might think a little more of it, but solely because Demix is at the heart of it, it's a lessened experience for me because his presence in the universe just pisses me off. Don't get me wrong, I think everybody has their place, just not him. F tier for personal reasons. Storm Rider. Also kind of sounds like a RuneScape username. Fun fact, this fight lasted 11 minutes, which, if you ask my girlfriend, is actually a pretty long time. This fight feels like a boss fight. Don't get me wrong, I know it's common to compare games to Dark Souls nowadays with no real reason behind it, but this boss has big, scary vibes, phases, and a bunch of moves. It's not intimidating in the slightest, but he looks the part. The gist of this fight is that you want to get up onto the Hydra's back. Once you take his back, slipping into the rear naked choke would probably be your best bet, but Sora opts for the classic Keyblade combo. It can be irritating to try and get up there while he's fucking carpet bombing you like a shitting B-52 bomber. He'll eventually get bored of flying around and come down for a closer look. After avoiding his inevitable loss like me when I get a parking ticket, he gives up and pays the price. Only, in this case, it's just straight up death. Although I don't like sitting around while a boss delays the inevitable, I do have to give credit where credit is due. This is a good fight. A tier. Very quickly before we get into the next boss, I need to mention this channel's brand new goal of a modest 100 billion subscribers. When I reach it, we're going to jump out of a plane naked, sucking on my own toes. So yeah, if you want to... yeah, subscribe. Zaldin. Freshly equipped with the Rumbling Rose, we head to the bridge to fight Zaldin, although to be fair, out of those two things, I don't know which one I prefer. He must have played Kingdom Hearts 1 himself because he's got Aero, which I think is bullshit, and he hates getting hit even more than he loves having hair like the guys from Avatar. The gist is to hit the learn command whilst avoiding his outrageous onslaught of aids. I mean, if those attacks actually did as much damage as they look like they should do, we would be in for a horrendous time. It's a great concept for a fight, and I'm sure some people love it, but for me, it's B tier. Absent Silhouette Pikachu. The first time in the game, you realise that if you want to do the data battles, you better start crushing up caffeine tablets and just injecting it straight into your eyeballs, otherwise you have got more chance of winning the shitting lottery. I would tell you how this fight works, but I think the main strategy is just to hope and pray. I mean, the main thing to remember here is that Reflect and Limit Form both exist. She has some really cool looking moves, and I love any fight that will test you, and if you're willing to go back and try it again even after she demolishes your ass, it must be good. S tier for Laxine. Grim Reaper. I would rather the actual Grim Reaper come for me than do this fight. This guy has got the weirdest mechanic ever. Like, if someone came up to me with a fat chest full of gold doubloons, I would just be taking the chest and leaving. He is about as susceptible to magic as I am to depression, so Blizzard will freeze him. And after you've slapped the money back in the box, you can just smash his tits off. And honestly, that's all there is to it. C tier. Ursula. I didn't think anybody would be joining Oogie Boogie in the depths of hell, but here we are. She goes very comfortably there. The edgy anime librarian. As an illiterate child, this is potentially Sora's most difficult challenge yet. Zexion doesn't give a shit, man. Everyone's getting turned into a book. He'll even turn himself into a book just for the lols. And it's your job to reach into his soul and pull him back to human form. Limit Form is basically compulsory here, as it is with most of these fights, and as they all will, this fight gets bonus points for visuals. A tier. Hades. His voice infuriates me on a level I can't even really describe, to be honest, almost rivaling my hatred for Dolan. He has two forms, only one of which is susceptible to Keyblade slaps, and to get him from one form to the other, we have to slap Herc's balls in his face. He pops up a decent amount and provides you with the balls, but if you miss it, it can be rather frustrating. I enjoy the fight itself, kinda, but D tier because Hades can fuck off. Genie Jafar. Apparently the first time he did this didn't teach him that turning yourself into an all-powerful genie just isn't the way. I always thought they should have utilised the snake version of Jafar in these games, because he was kinda cool. You are riding a magic carpet in this fight, which looks fucking dumb, but I love it. The strategy is basically just to repeatedly smash the goatee off his face, whilst hoping you don't die to the attacks that no one cares about. Reaction command when you can, and try not to lose your mind after getting hit by 500 buildings. Also, he looks like that guy that injects oil into his arms. You know that? You know this guy? C tier. Lock, shock, and barrel. There's actually a pretty fun gimmick to this one. It's just a shame we can't whack some chains on these boxes and throw them in a river. You have to knock the kids out, which is a crazy sentence, and then hit the boxes towards them. They won't stay KO'd forever, so you've got to be careful not to let them get back up. B tier for child abuse. Infiltrating my nightmares, it's the experiment. I don't know why this guy still exists, but to be completely honest with you, I'm really not alright with it. He has lasers, tornadoes, and detachable limbs. You knock his limbs off to the point where he becomes the most cursed dreidel you have ever seen. You then actually hit this guy with a rear naked choke and throw him into his own severed limbs. Rinse and repeat the previous steps and you'll have him taken care of. Hilarious fight in my opinion. A tier. Ed and Eddie Part 2. Just as annoying, to be honest. Please fuck off. F tier. I didn't write down the name for this one, and I'm not really sure what it is, so we'll just call it the Big Rock with Legs. This fight will be way cooler if you could actually see the guy. Until you get up onto the Hydra's back, you kind of feel like you're just fighting a wall with an eyeball. After you parkour your way up there, you are greeted with trees and bushes only comparable to what I imagine Susan Boyle is working with. Again, your view is pretty limited, but you hope for the best and mash like your life depends on it. Fairly average, really. It's B tier. Pretty sure this guy's name is Tony Stark. What's that, mate? A frisbee? Grow the fuck up and politely move aside so I can fight the real boss while you cheer him on whilst basically doing nothing to contribute, you neon piss flap. The MCP, he's just a big face, really. You have to deal with the other idiot as well here, but now he's big. You break down the walls and then mash his health bar with Tron's frisbee laser, I know I said earlier that I loved a good button mash, but Jesus Christ, this one goes on for far too long. He could have had 50% of his total HP, and it would still be questionable at just how much effort this takes. I have probably pressed the triangle button in this fight more times than I have taken steps in my life. It's not awful, but it makes my hand hurt. It's C tier. Leon and Yuffie. It's super cute that these guys are still fighting together, but maybe it's time to give up, man. It's just getting kind of sad. There's not a whole lot to be said, honestly. There are heartless that are more difficult than this. I'm looking at you, Hot Rod! That guy sucks. B for nostalgia. Hercules. They really should have taken Reflect out of this fight, because it's actually kind of tough to watch a god fall from grace like this at the hands of a child. It's embarrassing, Herc, but it's fun. You go here. Roxas! It's the best fight in the game, ladies and gentlemen. The music is straight up flames, while at the same time could make you cry like a baby. The significance of this battle is overwhelming, and it's not until years later that we learned who Roxas actually was and all the shit he went through that we realized how much this meant. It's not the hardest fight by any means, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you do need skill to get through it without just praying that you get lucky. Don't get me wrong, you don't have to repeat it 100 times until you know his moveset like the back of your hand, but if you're not careful, he can still catch you out. It's one of the most iconic battles in the series, and it's a solid representation of what it looks like in my brain when it's deciding which personality to release today. This is the S-ist S-tier that's ever S'd in S-ing existence. Xigbar. I never really thought much of this fight, to be honest, but it gets bonus points in that it's like the final hurdle that allows you to progress to the last push of the world that never was. That being said, other than a well-timed block or reflect, the fight basically plays itself out. Unless you're purposely learning the base game Xigbar moveset, you don't really feel like you're in control of what happens. As he walks around, just completely defying the laws of physics and blasts you with the force of a hot dick on a cold day. I don't even know what the fuck I just said, man. B tier, let's move on. Luxord.
To run out of time is the loser.
It's F. It's straight up F. Say it. It's the guy with the big club. Another top-class entry from Kingdom Hearts 2's base game, although he may look cool, calm and collected, he's actually fuming. Although I couldn't tell you what it is between being on the losing team that's getting absolutely dismantled by a few kids and a mouse, or straight up having a minuscule penis, but he's fucking pissed about something. Sora takes it upon himself to disrespect the guy even further by slapping the emo right out of him with his own weapon. Reflect is your best friend here. Well, either that or pure panic. This is an S-tier fight. I fucking love it. Zemnichad. This rather sexual man could be a contender for best fight in the game, as it does actually feature Kingdom Hearts 2's final boss without all the extra stuff that makes you want to rip your dick off and throw it at someone. If you focus up and really try and get your reflect timings down, it can make for a super visually pleasing battle as well. He has the only reaction command in the game that will throw you off trail harder than dangling a big cartoon ham in front of a sniffer dog. There's anime, there's lightsabers, there's the hardcorest of parkour. What more could you possibly want? S tier for the anime Darth Vader. The final boss. This is going to go for a while because we're going to do it all as one. Before I talk shit about how long and frankly pointless the final battles of these games tend to be, again, I must give credit where credit is due. Few games in existence have managed to build up and execute their climactic final moments with as much steeze and swagger as Kingdom Hearts 2. This is like a 20-minute boss fight that feels like 2 minutes, and that's not easy to do. It's quick yet smooth without the flow of the game ever really taking a hit, but that doesn't mean that it can't be fucking dumb, right? After some hardcore parkour, which was the coolest thing since Jackie Chan slid into the back of Chris Tucker's car with the elegance of a swan, you're up against your first roadblock. It's an engine. Your job is to destroy both cylinders using the gaggle of sacrificial nobodies that spawn indefinitely until you get the job done, which is convenient. After that, you're on some Star Wars shit and need to stop the energy core, hit the thing with the key, and defeat the waves of enemies that come in between. And that's part 1. If we're basing it purely on the combat, it's a D tier experience, and watching it back as I write this, it looks about as fun as watching a guy fuck your wife. But when you're actually playing it, something just feels different. It looks awesome, and when you pair that with the music, it feels significant. Knight Xemnas round 1. You hit the guy in the chair. He never stands up. It's fucking impossible to die here. Bonus points for his dope outfit and flashy moves, though. He does a good job of that. Mecha Super Laser Dragon. Remember the gummy ship? Well, that's what this is, but with a few extra steps. You build up the mighty fuck you laser and you let it rip right into the anus of the dragon. You'll do this several times and it is a nice break, but it goes on for far too long, especially on critical mode when your health bar is smaller than the patience I have for Dolan, and if you die, you're starting again. Knight Xemnas round 2. After a fake out of the game making you think that it's over, this is basically the same as round 1, but there's no gravity and buildings will be thrown. Actual Xemnas. Yo! He got the drip, man. Look at my boy. Let's kill him. This fight is a cinematic masterpiece. At its base, it's still very much a Kingdom Hearts boss fight, but what they did different sets it apart from any other fight in the series. It feels seriously climactic. I've seen a wide range of opinions online due to being part of this community for an amount of time so long it can't even be measured. But some people say that Kingdom Hearts 2 is the true ending to the series and all the other stuff that came after just isn't canon, I guess. It is a corker of an ending, to be fair. Tears will be flowing. Xemnas will shoot his nobody ropes at you with the force and speed of a cannon and then shoot many red lasers at you in several different patterns. Alongside this, he'll summon his clones to come and fight you face to face while he cowers in the sky or at the other end of the arena like the crust-cutting bitch that he is. That is until he gathers all of the red lasers that he can physically muster and sends them all at you, all at once, for a period of time indescribable by the human brain. I actually learned from one of your guys' comments that you don't have to mash X and triangle the whole time, you can just hold them down. Which means, basically, I got tendinitis for no reason whatsoever, so that's great. Looks cool, though. After a nice-looking reaction command, a weakened Riku assists Sora in getting his own back and shoots his own lasery ropes right back at him, but via the power of friendship. Xemnas perishes, or so we think. Come on now, do you really think after an essay like that he isn't going to be in S tier? Suck a dick, man. Sephiroth used to be like the scariest man in video game history, and he held the title for quite a while. The thought of even attempting to beat this guy used to have me shaking in my piss-filled boots. However, after cultivating my Kingdom Hearts skill, he becomes much easier, and thus, I can slap his little arse cheeks whenever I want. This dude is 10 times harder in Kingdom Hearts 1, and nothing you can say or do will change my opinion. Your movement in KH2 is like full dive VR in comparison, which makes avoiding and blocking his attacks far easier, and closing the distance for when he casts Heartless Angel, subsequently sucking your health and magic harder than a granny gum job. It's basically just a memory game. You have enough time to think about what you need to do before you need to do it. That doesn't mean that it's not like one of the most notorious and downright dubious fights in video game history. S tier. Lingering Will. I'll tell you whose ass cheeks I can't clap whenever I want. This guy. Still, to this day, a very problematic part of my life and someone who visits my nightmares from time to time. He thinks that you've stolen the Keyblade that was passed down to Riku and takes it upon himself to whoop your ass 1,000,000 times. This fight should come with a warning that says Ultra Instinct required ahead. I remember seeing this for the first time and being completely unaware of BBS. Like, he turned his Keyblade into a fucking motorbike! Yeah, it's very hard. Props to my lovely brother for providing me with this footage. I know it almost caused him a mental breakdown, so if you could share this video with someone that you think would like it, that would be really cool. He's S tier, obviously. And that about does us. Thank you very much for your time today. As you know, I like to keep the outro short. If you know someone that would enjoy this, like I mentioned before, please send it to them. For every new subscriber I get, I will kick one child. See you in a bit.